back to the third week of school and to our third family time video. A couple weeks ago, I was reminded of something. It was after one of our in-service days the week before school started. Had football practice after in-service, and my kids were staying with my folks. So after practice, I went to my mom and dad's house to pick them up. When I walked in, I grabbed a glass of water. I like to drink from a metal cup. So my mom always has some metal cups on hand, so I fill up a glass of water, and I just walked over to the living room, and I stood in the doorway, kind of leaned against one side of the door frame. I didn't notice right away, but my son Mickey, who recently turned 9 years old, all of a sudden disappeared, and the next thing, he was standing in the doorway with me, leaning against the other side of the door frame with a metal cup in hand, having a sip of water. That reminded me how much of what we do isn't the things that we're explicitly saying. So much of how we impact our own children, our students, anyone in our lives isn't necessarily the things that we're directly saying. It's the things that we're showing. So I was thinking about this week. What we're seeing and what we're showing. Because as teachers, we know that our students don't hear everything that we say. It's those moments in class where we explain every little detail of a process, and we ask if everyone understands, and we ask if there are any questions, and no one has any. And then as soon as we tell the students to get to work, that hand goes up when someone says, "What are we doing?" Now, there are times in those moments as teachers, we want to have that reaction like a dog that's eaten something that doesn't taste good. We want to kind of shake our heads and give the students a look, but we don't. We're used to that sort of thing. But on the flip side, we'll get some big reaction from students if we do something like get a haircut or wear a shirt that they haven't seen before. If I shave my beard off for some reason, I think my students have a bigger reaction if I were to set my classroom on fire. That's just the way it is. They're always watching us, and I think that's an important thing to understand. Some of the things we say aren't always going to land. They're going to go in one ear and out the other. But our students, our children, the people in our lives are always watching us. That's what we're going to talk about in family time this week. Is what are we seeing and what are we showing? One, seeing things can be difficult sometimes. Especially as teachers. We have a lot of things going on. We wear a lot of hats. We have a lot of students that we're trying to give attention to. We don't always see everything. I know that I've had students in my classroom who I've interacted with, and then I find out that they're having some difficult thing in their life, and I didn't know anything about it. I wasn't picking up on any problem that they were having. And that's a humbling thing. So I think it's important to really try to see the people in our classrooms, to really try to see the people in our lives, to really focus on them and pay attention to them. The other thing is we need to be aware of the things that we're showing. As a teacher, I kind of think of, what am I trying to sell the students on? I know that not every student's going to be fully bought in, gung-ho with every project we're doing or every activity we do in class or even everything like this, every family time thing, talking about feelings and values and things like that. But I try to show my students someone who loves his job, someone who loves them, someone who's doing what he thinks he ought to be doing in life. Those things I think, just kind of soak in. It's an environment. That's what I think about in my classroom, is I want the environment to be the selling point. I want students to want to be in there. And that's what I'm trying to show them. Because I know they're not always going to pick up on everything that I say. So I try to show them what I'm feeling. I try to show them what I'm communicating as much as I can. And I know I fail at that sometimes. But I think that's a great point of focus. And it's a great point of focus for our students as well. And that's what we're going to talk about this week. I'm going to have my students tell me how they show their core values. We've talked about over the last couple of weeks, our first week we talked about our why. Basically what motivates us, why we do the things we do. Last week we talked about our core values, those things that we put above everything else, our bottom lines that we can fall back on, the things we really believe in. But it's one thing to say what our why is. It's one thing to identify our core values. But it's an entirely different thing to live them, to put them into practice and show them to others. So that's my challenge to my students this week, is to tell me how they're living out their core values, how they're showing those values to other people. And they do. So my students watching this now, you do. You don't have to look any farther than my two kids to see that. I tell my kids all the time, we talked about it, I'm filming this on a Saturday, we talked about this on Friday night, coming home from a football game, as my kids get to be on the sideline. My daughter gets to be around the stat girls and the managers. My son gets to be around the football boys. They get to be in the weight room. They get to be around practice. All these things. They get to be around the high school students before and after school in the art room. My students help raise my kids. That's the absolute truth, because they're around them all the time and they see them as role models and positive influences, and they are. All of you students are those positive influences on my children. And you show them a lot of great things. So I want you to think about that this week. What are you showing anybody in your life that you care about? So what are we seeing and what are we showing? Let's have a great third week of school. Thank you.